AI around the world is unregulated. Citizens have died due to AI failures, from everything from self-driving cars to unmanned military weapons. AI permeates every field, from farming to the financial field. AI is being deployed in such a way that it targets consumers' privacy, creates ideological echo chambers, and is framed in a draconian legal framework that does not keep up with the technology. With a severe lack of regulations, oversight, and leadership, artificial intelligence is poised to become one of humanity's greatest problems in the next century.
So currently the main underlying issue with regard to artificial intelligence is a lack of a review board or a main watchdog organization to look into AI research, especially with the major tech corporations. So we need to develop an organization that can develop policy around AI and look at cases when those laws might be breached. And the main reason why we need this watchdog group is so research that does develop doesn't develop too rapidly or ahead of protections with whatever that research would bring along, to preserve protection and privacy of consumers and to preserve ethics in the technology community. So for our project, we're really looking at preventing a lot of the possible negative outcomes with AI developing too quickly with very negative ramifications. So we want to prevent those negative outcomes by educating the global public, reviewing the current practices, specifically within larger technology organizations, creating an intergovernmental organization that can recommend policies and review cases where those policies will have been breached on a global scale, hold tech companies accountable for what they're engaging with regard to research, and just increasing transparency to the public so they understand what data is being gathered about them. And lastly, developing a code of technological ethics.
Our action plan revolves around the formation of an IGO designed to aid in the AI development sphere. This IGO is going to focus on 5 particular areas. Firstly, education. We believe education is one of the biggest hurdles to overcome when dealing with AI. There is not enough information given to the public, and therefore we are in a dark, shadowy place when understanding the AI problem. With continued education, we believe that lawmakers and legislators can make true progress in dealing with AI. Next is review. We want this IGO to be able to review AI being implemented in the sphere and give their recommendations on AI best practices. We also want this IGO to help advance accountability, specifically accountability between the companies and between the public. Despite laws detailing that companies have to make explicit what they're doing with a consumer's data, it is so hard for a consumer to access that data and to access what the company is actually doing. That's essentially a moot point. We want a pooling of information with this IGO that would allow the public to truly understand what's happening with their data and therefore have accountability placed back on the company. The next point that we want this IGO to address is technology. We want, in this particular sphere, for the IGO to maintain technology's safety and safety precautions. Additionally, we want the IGO to stay as up to date as they can with new advances in AI by bringing in research experts who are able to understand what's happening in the field. And finally, a system and an organization that recommends alternatives to technology and makes sure that technology is not replacing the person. And finally, ethics. We want to open up a forum where we can talk about the ethics of implementing AI, and so that we can truly come to understand what we are wanting to create for our future. This is the E-rate system. AI's problem is leadership, we believe. And with an organization that is overseeing education, advising, and pooling of public consumer data, we submit that AI will be able to protect itself from the oncoming disasters of the future. While a daunting task, we believe that our solutions are completely feasible. Firstly, there are already NGOs and IGOs that advise governments on privacy and other technological matters, so we believe sliding in an AI IGO would not interrupt the balance in the system that is already there. There's an infrastructure for this IGO. Additionally, in actually buying into this IGO, it's a similar concept to the doctrine of mutually assured destruction, where if we do not place regulations and begin really focusing on AI as a world, we are going to destroy ourselves with said AI. We are already seeing data showing that AI has been causing accidents and that it is not perfect. And if we keep on tying ourselves so closely to AI, the entire world is going to be affected. So therefore, It is for the benefit of all countries and all people to buy into this new IGO. Additionally, human rights research actually applies here. CEDAW, the CAT, and the CCPR have shown that despite there not being any regulatory effects for such an IGO, countries and companies will still change their behavior. Additionally, the solution is practical because all the data and information is already available. It simply is dispersed. By pooling this data and information in one IGO, we are bringing the power back to the consumer and allowing for continued leadership in the field. And this leadership field is growing. That is our final point. Technological leadership, while new, is beginning to become more and more important. This is the area where technological leadership can really make its mark. And AI simply needs a little bit of leadership for it to be the greatest source of good that humanity has ever seen.
One of the main limitations is that technology, and AI in particular, is advancing very rapidly. So when it comes to the people who know a lot about AI, only about 70,000 are actually at the forefront, and only about 700 actually create new AI. So it's going to be very difficult for us to have watchdogs that know about the AI that we are talking about. Furthermore, when it comes to the increase in AI, it's very hard to make laws that keep up with the increasing technology. Because we're going to have so many different countries involved in this, they all have different patterns when it comes to their lawmaking. The problem when it comes to the advancing in AI is that different countries have different patterns when it comes to their law. So it's very hard to implement law when so many different countries have a different way in implementing that law. Another thing is that countries like to keep tabs on other countries. So they may want that privacy for their citizens, but for other people's citizens, they may not want as much privacy. One of the last things that is very hard for us to do is there is a difference between privacy on the federal scale and privacy on a company scale. This might help with privacy on a federal scale, but when it comes to privacy on a company scale, we might have to do more law implementation.
The problem of AI pertains to every field of study, every country around the world, and every single person. AI affects farmers to billionaires, and it will continue to affect us for years and years to come. However, if we don't start implementing leadership into the field and looking ahead to our future, we will be crippled by AI. We need to start looking at AI closely as a society, as a civilization. Leadership will forge us towards a better world if we allow it and if we implement it. For these reasons, we submit to you the E-rate system for our case study.